A self-respecting person knows their worth. They understand that being someone's second choice is a quiet form of disrespect. When people only show up when it's convenient, when they text only when they're lonely, or when they remember you only after everyone else is busy, someone with self-respect recognizes that pattern and steps away. They don't chase acknowledgement. They don't beg for a seat at a table where their presence is taken for granted, because they've learned that peace is better than attention and dignity is better than inclusion. One of the most powerful realizations a self-respecting person ever makes is this: you are not an option, you are a priority. The moment that truth settles into your spirit, everything about the way you allow others to treat you begins to change. When you're treated like an option, you feel it, subtly at first. It's the unanswered message, the canceled plans, the delayed responses that somehow always come when the other person has nothing better to do. It's the way they keep you around for convenience, but never for commitment. You begin to sense that their presence in your life is not rooted in care, but in comfort. And here's the painful truth: people will continue to treat you like an option for as long as you allow it. The one with boundaries looks like the villain to those who benefit from their absence. But self-respect teaches you that being alone in peace is far better than being chosen out of boredom. A self-respecting person refuses to be the emotional spare tire, used only when someone else's world falls apart. They will no longer settle for half love, half effort, or half presence. Because when you know your worth, you no longer compete for what you deserve. You stop chasing people who make you question your value. You realize that availability doesn't equal appreciation. There comes a moment when you look around and understand the people who truly care about you show up, not just when it's easy, not only when it's fun, but when it matters. They don't disappear during storms and reappear during sunshine. They stay. Being treated like an option teaches you something sacred about your soul. It reminds you of what you've been giving too freely: your time, your loyalty, your energy. Self-respect asks you to redirect those things toward yourself first, to pour into your own growth, your peace, your healing. Because the more you honor your own value, the less tolerance you'll have for anyone who doesn't. You'll stop negotiating your worth in rooms that require you to prove it. You'll stop asking to be chosen by people who never had the vision to see your light in the first place. A self-respecting person doesn't beg for love. They attract it by standing in their truth. They understand that when you stop settling for being someone's option, you open the door for relationships built on mutual effort, presence, and genuine care. The lesson is simple but liberating. Never let anyone treat your presence as a convenience. You are not a backup plan. You are not a temporary fix for someone else's loneliness. You are not a placeholder until something better comes along. You are the main character in your own story, worthy of consistency, loyalty, and respect. And the moment you decide to stop accepting less than that, everything around you begins to rise to match your new standard. Self-respect is quiet, but it's powerful. It's the voice that whispers, "I'm done explaining my worth to those who can't see it." It's the courage to say, "If I'm not valued here, I'll go where I am." And that, right there, is the beginning of freedom. One of the most subtle yet damaging forms of disrespect comes wrapped in humor. It sounds harmless on the surface, just a joke, just teasing, but beneath the laughter hides something sharp. A self-respecting person learns to hear the truth behind the tone. They recognize when funny has become a mask for cruelty. At first, you might laugh along. You don't want to seem too sensitive or dramatic. You tell yourself, they didn't mean it that way. But over time, those little jokes start to bruise your spirit. You notice the pattern, the way your insecurities become their punchlines, the way your achievements are downplayed with sarcasm, the way your emotions are mocked as overreactions. People who disguise disrespect as humor often do it to test your boundaries. They want to see how much of yourself you'll abandon to keep the peace. They know that if you protest, they can hide behind the line, "Relax, I was just kidding," and suddenly you're the one who looks unreasonable for protecting your own dignity. A self-respecting person refuses to play that game. They understand that constant mockery, even under the disguise of humor, is not connection, it's control. It's a way of saying, "I can disrespect you publicly and you'll still laugh along." But the moment you start respecting yourself, you stop being the punchline. You stop shrinking your reactions to make others comfortable. You stop explaining why certain jokes aren't funny when they're laced with humiliation. They know that kindness is not silence. Respect means having the courage to say, "That's not funny to me." It means not laughing at pain just to fit in. It means being willing to walk away from people who build their confidence on the backs of others. Self-respecting people understand something powerful. How you allow people to joke about you teaches them how to treat you. If you allow someone to constantly tear you down through laughter, they'll never stop, because to them, your discomfort is entertainment. But when you hold your ground, you teach them that humor has limits and respect has rules. They also know that the people who truly care about you never need to hide cruelty behind comedy. True friends can make you laugh without making you feel small. They can tease you in love, not in mockery. They can bring joy to the room without stealing your dignity to do it. And so when a self-respecting person encounters disrespect masked as humor, they don't internalize it. They identify it. They see it for what it is, a reflection of the other person's insecurity, not a reflection of their own worth. They don't fight for validation from people who find amusement in their discomfort. They simply move closer to those who know how to laugh with them, not at them. Because there's nothing funny about disrespect. There's nothing humorous about belittling someone's heart. And the day you stop laughing at things that hurt you is the day you stop betraying yourself. A self-respecting person doesn't need to be the loudest in the room. They just need to be the one who won't tolerate being disrespected in silence. Their peace, their confidence, and their self-worth are no longer up for public entertainment. That's not pride, that's protection. And it's sacred. Emotional manipulation is one of the quietest ways people steal your power. And guilt is often their favorite weapon. A self-respecting person learns to recognize this pattern early. They begin to see that real connection doesn't require constant explaining, over apologizing, or sacrificing your peace to prove your loyalty. Emotional manipulators are skilled at twisting compassion into obligation. They make you feel responsible for their moods, their mistakes, even their happiness. If you set a boundary, they act wounded. If you speak your truth, they accuse you of being cold. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I guess you don't care about me anymore. You've changed." But what they're really saying is, "You're no longer easy to control." A self-respecting person doesn't fall for that trap. They understand that love doesn't demand guilt. It invites growth. They realize that anyone who uses your empathy as leverage is not nurturing your heart. They're draining it. They've learned to separate love from manipulation. Love says, "I understand your no." Manipulation says, "If you loved me, you'd say yes." Love gives space for individuality. Manipulation demands submission disguised as care. And here's the truth. Guilt tripping works best on people with good hearts. The ones who care deeply, who never want to disappoint, who take responsibility, even when it's not theirs to carry. That's why self-respect becomes your shield. It doesn't make you unkind, it makes you clear. When someone tries to twist your boundaries into betrayal, you stand firm. When they use silence to punish you for speaking up, you don't chase their approval, you return to your peace. Because a self-respecting person no longer confuses control with connection. They understand that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you healthy. Walking away doesn't make you heartless, it makes you honest. And refusing to play emotional chess with someone who moves pieces out of manipulation is not weakness, it's wisdom. Self-respecting people know that guilt is not a measure of goodness. You can care deeply and still protect your energy. You can forgive and still keep your distance. You can love someone and still not tolerate being emotionally blackmailed. The moment you stop allowing guilt to dictate your decisions, you reclaim your freedom. You stop reacting out of fear and start responding from strength. You stop seeking peace through pleasing others and start finding peace by being true to yourself. And here's what happens next. Manipulators lose their power over you. The moment they realize they can't use guilt to control you, they either respect you or they leave. Either way, you win. Because a self-respecting person would rather be misunderstood for being strong than praised for being submissive. They understand that emotional freedom comes when you stop apologizing for protecting your heart. In the end, emotional manipulation only thrives where boundaries are weak. And self-respect, firm, steady, and unapologetic is the cure. There comes a point in every self-respecting person's life when they realize accountability is the foundation of trust. You cannot build genuine connection, healing, or growth with someone who refuses to take responsibility for their actions. A self-respecting person sees clearly that you cannot reason with someone who refuses to be wrong. People who lack accountability live in a constant state of blame. Everything that goes wrong is someone else's fault. They twist facts, rewrite history, and justify behavior that caused harm. They don't apologize, they deflect. They don't reflect, they project, and somehow you always end up being the problem. But a self-respecting person knows the cost of carrying someone else's denial. They refuse to live in a world where truth has to shrink to protect someone's ego. They understand that peace built on pretending isn't peace, it's avoidance. When someone refuses to own their mistakes, a self-respecting person doesn't chase closure. They stop trying to convince people to understand how they've hurt them. They stop explaining pain to someone who benefits from ignoring it because they know that you can't heal in a relationship where accountability doesn't exist. Accountability isn't about perfection, it's about humility. It's the courage to say, I was wrong, I see how I hurt you, I'll do better. Those words carry healing power, but without them, every connection becomes fragile because trust without honesty is an illusion. Self-respecting people don't need perfection from others, they need ownership. They can forgive mistakes, but they cannot tolerate denial. They're willing to work through problems, but not if they're the only one acknowledging them. Because relationships, whether friendships, families, or partnerships, cannot survive where responsibility is one-sided. They've learned the hard way that constantly forgiving someone who never admits fault is just enabling them to stay the same. You end up apologizing for your reaction while they never apologize for their action. And over time, that imbalance erodes your self-esteem. So they set a boundary. If you can't be accountable, you can't be close. Not out of pride, but out of protection. Because being around people who can't say, I'm sorry, slowly teaches you to doubt your own reality. It's like trying to heal in a place that keeps reopening the wound. A self-respecting person knows that real maturity is measured by responsibility, not age. They seek people who own their behavior, who reflect instead of deflect, who have the emotional intelligence to recognize when they've caused harm. Those are the people worth growing with because they understand that relationships thrive in truth, not denial. And when someone refuses accountability, the self-respecting person doesn't retaliate, they release. They let them go, knowing that carrying someone who won't own their part is too heavy for the soul. They trade chaos for clarity, resentment for wisdom. Because accountability is a mirror. It shows you who's willing to grow and who's committed to staying the same. And a self-respecting person would rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded by people who hide behind excuses. They know that peace isn't found in pretending everything is fine. It's found in standing firmly in honesty, even when it costs you comfort. That's not coldness, that's emotional clarity, and it's one of the highest acts of self-respect. There's a certain kind of pain that comes from realizing that someone only values you when you fit their expectations, that their affection depends on your compliance, that their approval is the price you pay for peace. A self-respecting person knows this feeling well, and they refuse to live under the weight of conditional love. Conditional love sounds like, I'll support you if you do what I say. I'll be proud of you when you act how I want. I'll be there for you, but only if it benefits me. It's love that moves with your obedience, not your authenticity. It's acceptance with strings attached. And it teaches you to perform instead of live, to hide your true self to stay loved, to sacrifice your voice for validation. But self-respect has a different rhythm. It says, I will no longer shrink to be accepted. It's the quiet decision to stop earning love by betraying yourself. It's the moment you realize that anyone who truly loves you will never require you to dim your light just so they can feel more comfortable in their shadow. A self-respecting person understands that conditional love is not love, it's control dressed up as care. It's about maintaining power, not connection. They know that true love doesn't say, be who I want you to be. It says, be who you are, and I'll meet you there. They've learned to recognize when people support the version of them that benefits others, but withdraw when they start evolving, when growth is met with resistance, when boundaries are met with guilt, when individuality is me, tea with silence. That's not love, that's possession. So they stop chasing the approval that keeps them small. They stop trying to please people who will never see them beyond what they can offer. They stop apologizing for wanting to be themselves because they understand that conditional love always demands pieces of you in exchange for temporary acceptance. Real love doesn't negotiate your worth, it celebrates it. It allows disagreement without distance. It lets you change without punishment. It lets you be wrong without rejection. It's built on freedom, not fear. A self-respecting person knows that they deserve that kind of love, the kind that stands when it's inconvenient, the kind that listens when it's uncomfortable, the kind that stays even when you're not performing. And until they find it, they'd rather stand alone in truth than stay bound to affection that disappears when they need it most. When you have self-respect, you stop confusing validation with value. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who only love the parts of you they can control. You learn to be at peace even when others withdraw their approval because you no longer depend on external applause to feel enough. And that's the freedom self-respect brings, the ability to love yourself without condition, to approve of yourself even when no one else does, to say, I don't need you to agree with who I am in order to be who I am. Conditional love may sound soft, but it suffocates the soul. It asks you to perform when you were meant to be. And when you finally stop performing, when you choose authenticity over approval, you attract relationships that honor your truth, not your obedience. Because the people who truly love you will never make your worth negotiable. They will never love you because of what you do for them. They'll love you in spite of it. A self-respecting person knows this, en cause. Conditional love begins with self-acceptance. When you give that to yourself, you stop begging others for what's already yours. One of the hardest lessons a self-respecting person learns is that when people keep making promises they never keep, a self-respecting person learns to stop waiting. They stop holding space for those who only show up in words. They no longer hang their hope on maybes and empty intentions. Instead, they create closure from within. They say to themselves, I will no longer confuse words with effort. I will no longer wait for actions that never come. I deserve consistency, not excuses. And once they make that decision, they stop being drawn to empty promises. They become drawn to reliability, integrity, and truth. Because peace is found not in perfection, but in predictability. Self-respect changes how you see people's patterns. You start to understand that words can comfort, but actions confirm. You no longer need promises to believe, you need proof to trust. And so the next time someone says, I promise, a self-respecting person doesn't just listen, they observe. They know that anyone can speak love, but only those who mean it can show it. Because ultimately, self-respect is not about cutting people off for being human. It's about protecting your peace from those who confuse saying sorry with true change. There comes a time when you realize that constantly giving to people who never pour back into you is a slow form of self-abandonment. A self-respecting person learns this the hard way, through exhaustion, disappointment, and the quiet ache that comes from always showing up for those who rarely show up in return. Energy drainers don't always announce themselves with malice. Sometimes they come disguised as people you love deeply. They're the friends who only call when they need something, the family members who expect endless emotional support but vanish when you need a listening ear, the partner who takes your care for granted, treating your effort like it's disposable. At first, you make excuses for them. You tell yourself, they're going through something, they'll change, they'll show up next time, but next time rarely comes, and every time you give them another chance, you feel a little more invisible. A self-respecting person reaches a breaking point, a sacred awakening, where they finally say, I can't keep giving from a place that's running on empty. They realize that love is not meant to feel like depletion, that relationships are not meant to be one-sided transactions where one person invests and the other simply receives.